Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. So this is an evening edition. So I did a video earlier on Joe Rogan, and I actually pulled the clip and posted it. We were talking about the adversarial press. That was the video earlier, and I said I was going to put up a couple of more. Okay, so this is with Dan Crenshaw. So first, I want to show you this. All right, so Joe Rogan is a Democrat. He's a liberal progressive. I guess you would say he's right wing. Well, he says it all the time when it comes to the Second Amendment, right? So guns, and I think is there one other big I don't know. I know it's guns, but Joe Rogan says all the time he's a liberal progressive, and people are confused. They're like, "No way! You're kidding me? He's a cage fighting commentator, and he's a hunter, and he's a meathead." They call Joe, I mean, he's this big stud, bald guy with tattoos, and many of his guests are right wingers. So they think that Joe is a Republican conservative, and he is not. Okay, so I've had arguments with many people. I've been following Joe since 2009, by the way. Love the guy. I was there December 24th, 2009 with Brian Redband in Joe's basement, I think it was, and I watch every single podcast, and I usually do a video afterwards. So some of my friends say, "Mike, he's a fucking conservative. What do you mean he's not a snowflake?" Well, no, he's not a snowflake, but he's a Democrat, Republican. What am I saying? Scratch that. He's a Democrat, liberal, progressive, like me. A centrist, actually. I am center left. I'm not going to get into my politics, but I'm going to play a clip right here. Okay.
I'm on the left, but I find myself more and more getting confused.
So there you go. Joe is on the left, and he's even said, and that's the one clip I pulled, but he has said over and over on his podcast, I'm a Democrat, and people are surprised. No, I'm a Democrat. I've never voted Republican in my life, Joe says. I've never voted Republican. He goes, 2016, I voted for Gary Johnson because I fucking hated Hillary and I hated Trump. So there you go. Okay. Continuing on. Okay, as you can see, I'm downstairs in my basement, my man cave, actually. Well, it's not really a man cave, but all my books and tapes and everything. Okay, so getting right into this. So I'm going to show you a little clip here. Again, it's the same Rogan, Dan Crenshaw. And I'm going to take issue here with Joe, all right? He's been talking about Joe Biden a lot, like how he has dementia and, he can't even put together a simple sentence and he's forgetting. I'm like, Joe, do you watch Trump's press conferences? I mean, listen, I know that Biden is old and perhaps he's declining. I know that's true, but Donald Trump is just as bad, and if not worse. So they're both old, So, but let me just play this clip, and then I'll continue.
Of Trump is me saying you shouldn't have a man who's clearly in the throes of dementia. I mean, I'm not a doctor. But when you can't form sentences in public and you forget what you're talking about and you wander off into these conversations, if you're not smoking pot, you're not high, if you're not on pills, like what's going on? Well, there's cognitive decline. He's an older man that has mental issues. And, not to be cruel to him, he's suffering medically. This is a real issue. And the Democrats want to sweep that under the rug. And Trump is already chewing him apart. He's already dismissing him. I mean, there is a recent thing that Kyle Kalinske posted, a video on his Twitter, talking about this is what happens when you don't discuss the elephant in the room. And it's Trump saying, he used to doing a press conference, and they asked him a question about something that Biden wrote. He goes, Biden didn't write that. He's like, that's a Democratic operative. He didn't read it. He probably doesn't even know what's going on right now. And he's gonna continue to do that. And it's such a vulnerable point. And I don't know why the Democrats thought it would be a good idea to take someone who's clearly got a problem. I mean, I don't want to be mean to the guy, but we've all seen it. That's not normal. It's not normal to forget, like when he's talking about the creator and he literally loses what he's saying. He's like, the thing. Like
misquoted the Declaration of Independence twice now. Which is...
I mean, that's
it's a very simple document. Like, I don't understand.
Well, there's a bunch of those things, like when he was talking about the cure and losing what he's saying, that you have to take care of the cure, and he's struggling. The guy's struggling. Yeah. He's tired. This is an extremely stressful process to run for president, and the idea that he's going to be able to get through this and be okay on the other side to run the country for 4, potentially 8 years is crazy.
That's a fucked up thing for Joe to say. I mean, look at Joe. Did you hear the way Joe talks? Listen, man. So what? Perhaps he misspoke or he was forgetful. I mean, that schedule is brutal. And like I said, go back on my channel if you're interested. I have a bunch of videos on Trump's miscues or his forgetfulness and like a slurring of the words. I mean, I think Joe's being unfair. I do agree he's an elderly man and perhaps he's not as agile as he once was. I've always been a fan of Biden. I do agree that he's old and he's declining, but Joe's fucked up here. Okay, let me continue. So we're coming up to the best part of the podcast. So Dan Crenshaw, he's a Republican. I admire the guy. I think he's incredibly smart. He's Navy SEAL, and he seems like a really good guy. But there's some. He's fucked up, all right? He's got the tribalism. He's a Republican. He's a conservative. And some of the shit's pretty fucked up, all right? So anyway, he gets a little sneaky here. So Dan Crenshaw is saying like, oh, okay, so price control. And he gives an analogy of like, hey, Joe, what if we could only charge, let's see, get $100 per ad, something like that, right? I go, how would you feel? And this is the best part of the podcast. And then they get into healthcare about comparing socialism with healthcare. Like Joe's like, why not Medicare for all? And like, oh, that's socialism. And well, Joe goes, well, fire department, police department, highways. How is that any different? And then Crenshaw's like, well, it's actually a public good. It's a public good. Okay, so Joe goes, come on. He's really nailing him down. Like, what is it? Explain to me. Public good or what you call socialism, that ugly word. How is that different? He goes, well, he's just like, he fucking nails him. And Crenshaw's like, So try to imagine, think about this way. And I really got props for Joe here. Like, say, for example, okay, you want to privatize everything and all, let's say you have a fire, you call the fire department like, nah, we don't do you. You're too poor. You don't have fire insurance or whatever you would call it, right? Okay, so what if there's, an assault or there's a murder? Nah, you don't have enough money. You're not part of the plan. It's the same exact thing, the analogy. So, right, public schools, highways, fire department, military, the whole thing. These are social programs. So Crenshaw's being a little sneaky. Now I'm going to play, this will be the last bit of this video, but this is very impressive. Joe respectfully destroys him here. Watch.
Once you fix prices, well, imagine this. Imagine if the government said that your podcast could only take $100 per ad, and that was just the price fix from now on. What incentive would you have to really expand your audience? What incentive would you have to keep going or expand the business? You wouldn't be able to. It's similar under any industry. Once you fix that price, you're going to reduce the supply that goes into it.
Can I stop you on that analogy?
Yeah.
Here's the problem with that. The difference is if there would have to be a reason why they would say that I could only get $100 per ad. The reason why you would say that things shouldn't cost too much for someone who's injured or sick is because we want to take care of each other as a community. And the idea is that healthcare should be something. Look, we provide so many services to people that we are united, right? We're the United States of America. We're supposed to be a gigantic community. And one of the great things that we could do for each other is to make sure that if someone's sick or injured and something's wrong, that we can take care of that. We would like everybody to do their share, and we would like everybody to chip in so that this is possible. But there's a big difference between that and fixing the price on an ad.
Well, no, but not economically. There's no difference. Morally, there is, and I agree with you. Morally, we have the same goal of getting everybody adequate care.
Right,
but from an economic standpoint, my point still stands, and you can apply that to any industry.
I see what you're saying, but I think we're looking at medical care as a basic human right instead of just an economic issue.
The reason I don't describe it as it's not, and you're right, it is both a moral and an economic issue. But for my argument that you will reduce supply, that is fundamentally true. It is fundamentally true. We see it in other countries. It's why, as we compare ourselves to other countries right now, all these places with socialized medicine, it's important to look at some stats. And actually, I have them here. I could take the time to pick them up, but I'll give you the bottom line up front. We have overwhelmingly per capita more ICU beds in this country than any other Western country. Overwhelmingly per capita, we have more ventilators than any of these other people. We're all freaking out right now because we're worried about our ventilators and our ICU beds. On a per capita basis, our system has way more than the UK, than Italy, than Spain, than Germany, all of them. Like orders of magnitude more. Okay, so also, we're the ones who innovate. I mean, the vast majority of research and development, new drugs that come out, that comes from this country. So these are facts that we can't escape. If we do price controls, and Medicare for All is fundamentally a system of price controls. If we do that, economically speaking, we absolutely will reduce supply. Now, I understand the moral argument you're making, which is we still want to help people. Yes, we should. We should be looking for the ways to do that. But I want to be able to do that in a way that doesn't undercut the foundations of the good parts of our healthcare system, which is quality and innovation. If we undercut those things, and we're the last country doing this, we're the last country in the world truly doing innovation, the world is left out to dry.
Can I pause you there? What you're saying makes a lot of sense. Is there a way to do both? Is there a way to provide health care to everyone, but also encourage this innovation, encourage profit, so you encourage these companies to do all these great things that you're describing and maintain this incredibly high level of health care that we have right now?
That's certainly the goal, right? And that should be the goal. And this is why I think there's got to be room for compromise on the healthcare debate, because you can't compromise with the other party if the goals aren't the same. Like I've come to believe that our goals on immigration are actually not the same. Okay, so it's hard to compromise. On healthcare, they should be the same. Like, because we want everybody to have access to quality healthcare. Now, they have a very different way of getting to that point. We have probably a much more complicated. We recognize how difficult it is to get to that point while also ensuring that we maintain quality and innovation. And so what I'm working on personally is the primary care side of things. Okay, so primary care doctor that's your first point of contact in healthcare. And the system that I think works best for that is direct primary care. So direct primary care basically means that you, Joe, you're a doctor. You can handle about 250, 300 patients at a time. They all pay you a subscription fee of about $75 a month, and they have full access to you. So it's like less than a cell phone bill. This already exists. This model is prevalent. It's growing. I would like to see it grow much faster. Okay, how do you do that? Well, we can't subsidize lower income people in order to do that. Now, how we do that is very complicated. That's what I'm working out within our complicated system. But that's an idea to make that free market model actually take off so that people who don't need help with their healthcare costs, like you and me, we can still afford that just like we afford any other monthly cost. And you have access to preventive medicine. You have access to telemedicine. You actually have a doctor-patient relationship. That makes it a lot easier to start solving the rest of the problem, making our insurance market more competitive, putting more choice in it, directly subsidizing those who need it, but in a way that looks a lot more like Medicare Advantage. So Medicare Advantage is a part of Medicare that basically forces competition and choice between insurance companies. It came out to be a lot cheaper than we originally thought it would in the early 2000s when this thing was created. This was a Republican plan because there's certain foundations that I think we have to adhere to anytime we want to problem solve. Choice and competition are among them. You can't escape those things. And I think when we talk about Medicare for All, it tries to move past these essential foundations, whether of a free society that we have to adhere to, and because the other thing I push back on a little bit is the healthcare as a right statement. And I push back against that because when you're calling something a right, what you're effectively saying is that somebody else has a obligation to serve you. And it's hard to call something a right when that right requires the service of somebody else.
But don't we already do that?
Nitpicky.
Don't we already do that with the firemen? Don't we do that with the police department? Don't we do that with public schools?
Not exactly. No, I mean we have public services that I would distinguish those public services from something like a direct point of care, and I would distinguish them to an enormous extent. Like, and here's why: you can add a few 100,000 more people to the nation's population, and it doesn't change the mission of the military, right? Like it doesn't take anything away from them. But because of this sort of non-rival, this is like an economics term, but this sort of non-rival attribute of these things, it is different, right? Because there's only a select number of doctors. And we've already said that once you put price controls in, there's going to be less doctors because doctors will be paid less. They'll get burned out more. Then hospitals will be able to, I actually never finished that point. The reason price controls reduce supply and the reason we see supply reductions in other countries is because, well, hospitals don't get the same amount of money. They're not going to invest in that extra ICU bed. They're not going to buy those extra ventilators. They're not going to hire those other doctors. A doctor doesn't want to be a doctor because they don't make the amount of money that they thought they would make. They're doing extra work because there's more people who now have access to them, but there's less of them. So wait lines are huge, and they're seeing multiple more patients a day. Doctor burnout increases quite a bit. That's the quick answer as to why that happens. But does that kind of answer your question? This is getting really deep on this.
Yeah, the human right issue. We kind of moved around with that. The idea that it's different than the fire department or the police department, or
well, it's not a right either. Actually, the fire department's not necessarily a right as we would.
But it's a public service that's provided to everyone.
Yeah, it is. But understand. So let's call it a public service then, and let's call doctor healthcare a public service as well. If we were to do Medicare for all,
but wouldn't the result be the same if it's provided for everyone?
Not from a practical standpoint, just because it's much easier. Again, you could add 100,000 people more to your city, and the fire department would have marginally more work to do. Compared to like a doctor, for instance. Does that make sense? Like it doesn't. I think if we're trying to compare them in that sense, that non-rival attribute matters quite a bit. If I'm describing that correctly.
I see. So what you're saying is because competition is necessary with medical innovation, and also like doctors profit off of being exceptional. So they have incentive to be exceptional.
No. What I'm saying is if you have 10 doctors that are serving a community, every time that doctor is serving somebody, it means somebody else can't see them.
Well, isn't that just a signal that we need more doctors and more hospitals?
It is.
They're understaffed?
Yeah. It would be, yes. But I'm saying that's how it's different from a fire department, which is sort of lying in wait for a fire to occur.
Well, if there was more fires.
Yeah, but just unlikely.
So there you go. That's pretty disgusting. I was saying Crenshaw is a good guy. That's pretty shitty what he's saying. I mean, I agree with him that, the healthcare problem is really, by the way, I was going to say the healthcare problem is very, very complicated. No one really has an answer. I'm Medicare for all. Makes sense to me, but I understand how complicated it is. And the bottom line is, someone's gonna have to pay. Now, by the way, T.R. Reid, this is on tax. I have another book on the healthcare system. I recommend the book. When I find it, I'll post it. I'll put it in the comment section. So essentially, you could see Crenshaw squirming, like wait a minute. So. And then Joe said, okay, doctors are exceptional. And he was like, I backed myself into the corner. Am I going to say, yes, that's it? And firemen and police officers are not exceptional. You see, man, Joe really nailed him here. So that was pretty disgusting. It's just, the bottom line is just selfishness. That's all it is. Like you have healthcare. And how many? I think the last I Googled, let's see, 32 million people do not have health insurance. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. And by the way, now that everyone's out of work, we all know now the Republicans, the middle class Republicans, the working class, the guys paycheck to paycheck, the blue collar folk, they're like, wait a minute, I don't have any health insurance. You see what I mean? All right. That was fantastic. I think I'll end it here. And I'm going to be doing a lot more of these. All right. On that note, good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding here on Tabor Talk.